The gunman's finger trembled on the trigger. The cold metal pressed against Victoria Hale's temple as terrified shoppers cowered behind display cases. In that split second before chaos erupted, a disheveled single father made a choice that would reveal a past he'd buried for years and change two lives forever. Welcome to a story where heroes hide in plain sight, where love blooms in the aftermath of violence, and where sometimes the poorest among us possess the richest secrets. Stay with me until the end and comment your city below. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. The November rain hammered against the windows of Rothschild's fine jewelry, each droplet catching the light from the chandeliers inside before racing down the glass like liquid diamonds. It was the kind of evening that made people hurry past with umbrellas clutched tight, the kind that turned the city into a blur of headlights and wet concrete. Inside the store, however, time moved differently, slower, more deliberately, as if the weight of all that luxury demanded a certain reverence. Ethan Cole stood near the back wall feeling profoundly out of place. His worn leather jacket had seen better days, probably sometime during the Bush administration, the first one. Water still dripped from his hair, which he'd neglected to cut for the past 3 months. Not out of style, but out of the simple mathematics of single parenthood. Haircuts cost money, and money meant food for Lily. "Daddy? Look at this one." His 7-year-old daughter pressed her small nose against the glass case, her breath fogging up the surface. Inside, a delicate silver locket caught the light, its surface engraved with tiny stars. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Ethan said softly, his calloused hand resting gently on her shoulder. The price tag, discreetly turned face down but still visible from his angle, read $450. More than he'd make in a week at the construction site, assuming they had work, which they didn't always. "Do you think Mommy would have liked it?" Lily asked, her voice dropping to that particular whisper children use when talking about the dead, as if speaking too loudly might disturb them. Ethan's throat tightened. 3 years since Sarah's death, and Lily still spoke about her mother in the present tense sometimes, as if she'd just stepped out for groceries and would be back any minute. "She would have loved it, baby. Your mom loved anything with stars." He remembered Sarah's fascination with the night sky, how she'd wake him at ungodly hours to watch meteor showers from their apartment's fire escape. Back when they had an apartment with a fire escape. Back when they had Sarah. "Can I help you?" The sales associate, a woman in her 50s with perfectly coiffed hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, approached them with the particular brand of polite wariness reserved for customers who obviously couldn't afford anything. "We're just looking," Ethan said, the words coming out more defensive than he'd intended. "My daughter likes to—" "Of course," the woman interrupted, her smile tightening further. "Though I should mention we'll be closing in 30 minutes. The message was clear. You don't belong here. Leave." Ethan felt the familiar burn of shame mixed with anger. He was about to suggest they go when Lily tugged at his jacket. "5 more minutes, Daddy. Please, it's so pretty here." How could he explain to a 7-year-old that pretty places weren't meant for people like them, that the world had divided itself into those who bought diamonds and those who could barely afford groceries? He couldn't, so he just nodded. 5 more minutes. That's when she walked in. Victoria Hale moved through the world like she owned it, which in many ways she did. At 34, she was the youngest CEO in her company's history, having inherited the position not through nepotism, but through what the business journals called ruthless brilliance. She'd turned a failing pharmaceutical company into a billion-dollar empire in just 5 years. The financial press loved her competitors feared her, and her board of directors had learned to simply get out of her way. Tonight she wore a charcoal Armani suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized the sharp angles of her face. She moved through the jewelry store with purpose, her heels clicking against the marble floor in a rhythm that suggested she had somewhere more important to be. "Ms. Hale," the store manager appeared as if summoned, practically vibrating with excitement. "What a pleasure. I wasn't expecting you until tomorrow." "My schedule changed," Victoria said curtly, checking her phone even as she spoke. "Is the piece ready?" Of course, right this way?" Ethan watched this interaction with the detached interest of someone observing a nature documentary about a completely foreign species. He noticed how the same sales associate who'd been so eager to usher them out now practically genuflected as Victoria passed. Money didn't just talk. It commanded, it demanded it, reorganized the very molecules of the air around it. "She's pretty," Lily whispered, still entranced by the jewelry but sneaking glances at Victoria. "Don't stare, baby," Ethan said gently, turning her away. That's when the world exploded. The front door burst open with such force that it sent the entry bell flying across the room. A man in a black ski mask charged in a Glock 19 held high in his right hand. He was big, maybe 6'2", 220 pounds, and moved with the jittery energy of someone high on something more than adrenaline. "Everybody down now." The scream that followed came from multiple throats at once. The elderly couple near the wedding rings dropped to the floor, the man trying to shield his wife with his body. The sales associate ducked behind the counter. The manager froze his mouth open in a perfect O of surprise. But Ethan didn't drop. Instead, he moved on pure instinct, pushing Lily behind a solid display case, pressing her down with one hand while his eyes tracked the threat. Old habits, old training flooding back like muscle memory. "Stay down, baby," he whispered urgently. "Don't move, don't make a sound no matter what happens." Lily's eyes were wide with terror, but she nodded, curling into a ball behind the case. The gunman was shouting, now his voice cracking with nervous energy. "The safe! Open the fucking safe!" I can't," the manager stammered. "It's on a time lock. It won't open until—" The gunman whipped around the gun, swinging in a wide arc. And that's when he saw Victoria. She stood perfectly still, her phone still in her hand, as if her brain couldn't quite process that this was actually happening. In her world, violence was abstract hostile takeovers, market manipulation, boardroom coups. Not this. Never this. "You—" The gunman pointed the gun at her. "Expensive suit, fancy jewelry. You're coming with me." "I don't think—" Victoria started, her CEO voice, attempting to take control of the situation. But the gunman was already moving, crossing the distance in 3 quick strides. He grabbed her arm, yanking her against him, the gun now pressed against her ribs. "Insurance policy," he muttered more to himself than anyone else. "Rich bitch like you, they'll open anything to keep you breathing." Victoria's composure finally cracked. Ethan could see it in her eyes, the moment when abstract became real, when she understood that all her money, all her power meant nothing to a desperate man with a gun. The gunman started backing toward the door, dragging Victoria with him. "Nobody moves! Nobody calls the cops until we're gone, or I put a bullet in her." Ethan's mind ran through the calculations with the cold precision of someone who'd done this before in places far worse than a jewelry store in downtown Chicago. Distance 12 feet, obstacles 2, display cases 1 overturned chair. The gunman's stance was wrong, too much weight on his back foot gun, held too far from his body. Amateur. Dangerous, but amateur. In Afghanistan, Ethan had learned that the most dangerous moment in any hostage situation was the transition when the hostage taker tried to move from one location to another. That's when they were most vulnerable, most distracted, most likely to make a mistake. But it was also when they were most likely to panic and pull the trigger. "Please," Victoria said, her voice steady despite the fear. "Take whatever you want. There's no need for— Shut up!" The gunman jerked her harder, and she stumbled in her heels. They were almost to the door now. In 5 seconds, they'd be outside. In 10, they'd be in whatever vehicle the gunman had waiting. And after that? Ethan thought of Lily curled up behind the display case. Thought of Sarah, who'd made him promise to be careful to come home to be there for their daughter. He'd kept that promise for 3 years. 3 years of construction work and night shifts of food stamps and welfare offices, of swallowing his pride and pretending his past didn't exist. But some promises were meant to be broken. The gunman made his mistake. Then he looked back at the door, checking his exit route. His gun hand dropped just slightly, the barrel moving away from Victoria's ribs for just a fraction of a second. Ethan moved. Not like a construction worker, not like a single dad who spent his evenings helping with homework and making mac and cheese. He moved like what he really was, what he'd tried so hard to bury, a former Delta Force operator who'd spent 8 years in the most dangerous places on Earth, doing things that never made the news. The first rule of close quarters combat violence of action. Don't hesitate, don't telegraph, don't give them time to think. Ethan crossed the 12 feet. In under 2 seconds, his approach completely silent despite the marble floor. His left hand clamped down on the gunman's wrist, controlling the weapon while his right elbow drove into the man's solar plexus with enough force to drop a horse. The gunman's breath exploded out of him. The gun went off, the sound deafening in the enclosed space, but Ethan had already redirected the barrel upward. The bullet punched through a chandelier, sending a rain of crystal shards down on them. Victoria stumbled away as Ethan pivoted, using the gunman's own momentum against him. It was a move he'd practiced thousands of times in training, executed hundreds of times in combat. The gunman's wrist snapped a sound like a branch breaking, and the gun clattered across the floor. But the man was high on something, probably meth, and the pain just seemed to enrage him. He swung wildly with his free hand, catching Ethan across the jaw. It was a solid hit, enough to make Ethan see stars, but he'd taken worse. Much worse. Ethan let the momentum of the punch spin him, then came back with a knee strike that connected with the gunman's ribs. There was a satisfying crack, and the man finally went down, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "Stay down," Ethan said quietly, his boot on the man's back, applying just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without crushing his windpipe. "It's over." The whole thing had taken less than 10 seconds. For a moment, the only sound was the gunman's labored breathing and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Then, as if someone had hit play on a paused video, everyone started moving and talking at once. "Oh my God. Is everyone okay? Did anyone call 911? That was incredible." But Ethan wasn't listening. He was already moving back to where Lily was hidden, dropping to his knees beside the display case. "It's okay, baby," he said softly, his voice completely different from the one he'd used with the gunman. "It's all over. You can come out now." Lily crawled out and threw herself into his arms, sobbing. He held her tight, whispering reassurances, trying to shield her from the sight of the man on the floor, the broken glass, the chaos. "You promised," she whispered into his shoulder. "You promised you wouldn't do the soldier stuff anymore." Ethan's heart cracked a little. "I know, baby. I'm sorry. But someone was in trouble. Like when you helped those people before Mommy got sick." "Yeah," he said quietly. "Like that." He became aware of someone standing close and looked up to find Victoria Hale staring down at him. Her perfect composure was completely shattered. Her hair had come loose from its bun, falling around her face in dark waves. There was a smear of blood on her cheek. Not hers, he realized, but from the gunman. "You saved my life," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan stood lifting Lily, with him settling her on his hip, even though she was getting too big for it. "Right place, right time." "No," Victoria said firmly, some of her CEO bearing returning. "That wasn't luck. That was training. Who are you?" Before Ethan could answer, the police burst through the door, weapons drawn, shouting commands. The next several minutes were a blur of questions, statements, and barely controlled chaos. Ethan kept Lily pressed against him, her face buried in his shoulder as he gave his version of events to a skeptical detective who clearly wondered how a construction worker had managed to disarm an armed robber. "I got lucky," Ethan said for the third time. He wasn't expecting anyone to fight back. The detective, a grizzled veteran named Murphy, looked at him with the expression of someone who'd heard too many lies to believe in coincidence. "Lucky, right. You military—" "I did a stint," Ethan said carefully. "Long time ago." "What branch?" "Well, Army." "What unit?" "Does it matter?" "The guy's in custody. Everyone's safe." Murphy stared at him for a long moment, then flipped his notebook closed. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow. Make a formal statement." "I work tomorrow." "What time?" 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Hammond Construction if they have work." Murphy's expression softened slightly. He had the look of someone who understood what it meant to need every hour of work you could get. "Come by after. We'll make it quick." As the police led the gunman away, conscious now, and screaming about police brutality, Victoria approached again. The manager was hovering nearby, wringing his hands and muttering about insurance and publicity. "I need to thank you properly," Victoria said. "Can I have your contact information?" That's not necessary. Please, I insist. Ethan was about to refuse again when Lily lifted her head from his shoulder. Daddy needs a job, she announced with the devastating honesty of children. A real job, not the kind where they don't pay him sometimes. Lily, Ethan's face burned with embarrassment, but Victoria was looking at Lily with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. Is that so? What kind of work does your daddy do? He builds things, Lily said, warming to her subject. And he fixes things. He can fix anything. Our neighbor Mrs. Chen says he's a miracle worker. He fixed her refrigerator and her car. And, that's enough, baby, Ethan said gently. Victoria pulled out a business card from her purse, pressing it into Ethan's hand. Please, call me tomorrow. I own several companies. I'm sure we can find something. Ethan looked at the card. Victoria Hale CEO, Hale Pharmaceuticals. The logo was one he recognized from billboards, from the news, from the medications that had failed to save Sarah. I don't need charity, he said stiffly. It's not charity, Victoria said. Call it a thank you. Or call it good business sense. Anyone who can do what you just did is someone I want on my team. She paused, studying his face with those sharp eyes that had probably dissected 1,000 business deals. There's more to you than you're letting on, Mr. Cole. Ethan Cole. Mr. Cole. She said his name like she was filing it away for future reference. Well, Mr. Cole, you saved my life tonight. The least I can do is offer you a job interview. Daddy, say yes, Lily whispered urgently. Ethan looked down at his daughter, at her second-hand clothes and 2 small shoes, at the hope in her eyes. Then he looked at Victoria with her expensive suit and her perfect nails and her money that could solve every problem except the ones that really mattered. I'll think about it, he said finally. Victoria smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, making her look younger, less like a CEO and more like a woman who'd just had a very close call. That's all I ask, she said. Think about it. As they were leaving, Ethan carrying Lily, who was exhausted from the adrenaline crash, Victoria called out one more time, Mr. Cole, that insignia on your jacket, the one you keep trying to hide with your arm. 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta, isn't it? Ethan stopped, but didn't turn around. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not, Victoria said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. My mistake. But Mr. Cole, Delta Force or not, what you did tonight, thank you. Ethan walked out into the November rain without responding, Lily already half asleep against his shoulder. The water was cold against his face, washing away the sweat and the lingering adrenaline. He'd kept his promise to Sarah for 3 years. 3 years of being nobody, of being invisible, of being safe. But tonight, for just a moment, he'd been himself again. And someone had noticed. As he walked toward the bus stop, his ancient Honda had finally died 2 weeks ago. Ethan found himself fingering the business card in his pocket. Hale Pharmaceuticals, the company whose experimental treatment had cost them everything they had given them hope, and then snatched it away when Sarah's cancer proved too aggressive, too advanced. The rational part of his brain said to throw the card away. Nothing good could come from getting involved with that world with people like Victoria Hale, who lived in penthouses and thought money could fix everything. But another part, the part that was tired of choosing between groceries and electricity, tired of watching Lily pretend she wasn't hungry, tired of being nobody, that part wanted to call the number on the card. Daddy, Lily mumbled against his shoulder, are we going to be okay? Yeah, baby, he said softly, stepping onto the bus, the card still in his pocket. We're going to be okay. But as the bus pulled away from the curb, Ethan caught a glimpse of something that made his blood run cold. A black SUV, windows tinted, pulling out into traffic behind them. The same SUV he'd noticed outside their apartment building 3 times this week. Maybe it was paranoia. Maybe it was the adrenaline still coursing through his system, making him see threats where none existed. Or maybe just maybe his past wasn't as buried as he'd thought. The business card in his pocket suddenly felt heavier. Victoria Hale thought she knew who he was because of an insignia on his jacket. But Delta Force was just part of the story. The rest, the missions that didn't exist, The enemies who thought he was dead, the reasons he disappeared in the first place, those were secrets that needed to stay buried. For Lily's sake, if nothing else. The bus rumbled through the wet streets of Chicago, carrying them back to their cramped apartment in a building that should have been condemned years ago. Ethan held his daughter closer, watching the city lights blur past through the rain-streaked windows. Tomorrow, he would have to decide whether to call Victoria Hale. Tomorrow, he would have to figure out if the SUV was really following them or if he was just jumping at shadows. Tomorrow, he would have to pretend to be just another construction worker, just another single dad trying to make ends meet. But tonight had changed something. The careful walls he'd built around his life, the invisible cage he'd locked himself in there, were cracks in it now. And through those cracks, his past was seeping in like water, patient and inexorable. "Daddy," Lily said sleepily, "that lady, she looks sad." "What makes you say that, baby?" Her eyes. "They look like yours sometimes, like when you think I'm not watching." Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just held her tighter as the bus carried them through the night, through the rain, toward a future that suddenly seemed far less certain than it had just hours before. In her penthouse apartment, 40 floors above the city, Victoria Hale stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the rain streak down the glass. Her assistant had wanted to take her to the hospital to have her checked for shock or injury, but she'd refused. She needed to be alone. She needed to think. Ethan Cole. She'd already had her head of security run a preliminary check. The results were frustratingly sparse. Honorable discharge from the Army 6 years ago. Wife deceased 3 years ago, cancer. One daughter, age 7. Current employment, sporadic construction work. Current address, a building in Southside that her driver wouldn't even stop at without hazard pay. But there were gaps. Big ones. His military record was mostly redacted. The 2 years after his discharge were a complete blank. And then he'd appeared in Chicago with a dying wife and a young daughter working minimum wage jobs, living so far below the radar he was practically underground. Men didn't develop skills like the ones she'd witnessed tonight working construction. The way he'd moved, the tactical precision, the complete lack of hesitation, that was years of elite training, the kind reserved for people who did things governments didn't acknowledge. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Richard, her CFO, and sometimes lover, making sure she was all right. She ignored it like she'd ignored the 12 calls from board members who'd already heard about the incident. Tomorrow the story would be in the papers. Pharmaceutical CEO saved by heroic bystander. The PR department was probably already drafting statements spinning it for maximum positive coverage. But Victoria didn't care about the publicity. She cared about the puzzle. Because Ethan Cole was definitely a puzzle. A former Special Forces operator hiding in plain sight, raising a daughter alone, barely surviving. Why? What was he running from? Or who? Victoria smiled, the expression reflecting ghost-like in the dark window. She'd built her empire by seeing opportunities where others saw obstacles, by recognizing value where others saw nothing. And Ethan Cole, whether he knew it or not, was valuable. She just had to figure out how to convince him of that. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, which was unusual. Her personal phone was heavily filtered. "Hello." There was a pause, then a voice she didn't recognize, male accented, Eastern European maybe. "Ms. Hale, you had an interesting evening." "Who is this?" "Someone with information about the man who saved you tonight. Information I think you'd find very interesting." Victoria's grip on the phone tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man chuckled. "Of course not. But let me give you a free piece of advice, Ms. Hale. Ethan Cole is not who you think he is, and getting involved with him will bring you nothing but trouble." "Is that a threat?" "It's a kindness. One professional to another. Stay away from him, for your own safety." The line went dead. Victoria stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it down carefully. She walked to her home office, bypassing the official company computer for her personal laptop, the one with military-grade encryption that had cost more than most people's cars. If someone was warning her away from Ethan Cole, that meant there was something worth warning her away from. And in Victoria's experience, the things people tried to keep hidden were usually the most valuable things of all. She began typing, reaching out to contacts she rarely used. People who owed her favors. People who knew things. People who operated in the shadows where men like Ethan Cole learned to move like ghosts. By dawn, she would know more. And by tomorrow night, she would make Ethan Cole an offer he couldn't refuse. Not because she needed another employee, not even because he'd saved her life, but because Victoria Hale had built her empire by collecting broken things and making them whole again by finding diamonds in the rough and polishing them until they shone. And Ethan Cole, with his haunted eyes and his dangerous skills and his desperate love for his daughter, was the most interesting broken thing she'd encountered in years. The rain continued to fall over Chicago, washing the blood from the jewelry store's floor, carrying the broken glass into the gutters. But the events of this night would ripple outward like waves touching lives in ways no one could yet imagine. In a rundown apartment in Southside, a little girl dreamed of stars and diamonds, while her father sat awake standing guard against shadows, both real and imagined. In a penthouse high above the city, a woman who thought she knew everything about power was about to learn that some forces couldn't be bought, or sold, or controlled. And somewhere in the darkness, in a black SUV with government plates, a phone call was being made. "Sir? He's been found." "Yes, sir. Cole. He surfaced tonight." "No, sir. He doesn't know we're watching. Not yet." The city slept unaware that the careful balance of a hidden life had been disturbed, that old debts were about to be called in, that love and danger were about to become inextricably intertwined. But that's a story for tomorrow. Tonight there was just the rain and the memory of violence and the strange comfort of knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the right person is in the right place at exactly the right moment. Even if that person is trying very hard to be nobody at all. The construction site at dawn was a symphony of diesel engines and shouting foremen, the kind of organized chaos that Ethan had grown to find almost meditative. He arrived at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, as always, his breath visible in the cold morning air. His jaw still ached from last night's encounter, a purple bruise spreading across the left side of his face that he'd tried unsuccessfully to hide from Lily at breakfast. "Jesus, Cole, what happened to you?" Mike Hammond, the site supervisor, looked up from his clipboard with concern. Mike was one of the good ones, a boss who actually made sure his workers got paid, even if it meant fighting with the general contractor. "Bar fight," Ethan lied smoothly, pulling on his hard hat. "You should see the other guy." Mike snorted. "Sure. And I'm dating a supermodel. You good to work? I'm here, aren't I?" That was the end of it. Construction sites had their own code. You showed up, you worked. You didn't ask too many questions about the bruises and the hangovers and the reasons men ended up breaking their backs for $15 an hour. Ethan lost himself in the rhythm of the work, hauling rebar-mixing concrete building forms for the foundation of what would eventually be another glass tower full of people like Victoria Hale. The November wind cut through his jacket, but the physical labor kept him warm. This was simple, honest work, nothing like the complexities of his former life where a single decision could mean the difference between a successful extraction and a diplomatic incident. His phone buzzed in his pocket around noon. He ignored it. It buzzed again 5 minutes later. And again. "You gonna answer that?" Jorge, one of the other workers, asked during their lunch break. "Sounds important." Ethan pulled out his phone, a flip phone that Lily constantly mocked him for, and saw 3 missed calls from an unknown number. As he stared at it, it rang again. "Mr. Cole." The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Amanda Chen, executive assistant to Victoria Hale. Ms. Hale would like to schedule a meeting with you this afternoon." "I'm working." "Ms. Hale is aware of your schedule. She's arranged for you to have the afternoon off with pay. A car will pick you up at 2 p.m. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. "She arranged for me to have the afternoon off. Did she bother to ask if I wanted the afternoon off?" There was a pause. "Ms. Hale assumed you would appreciate the opportunity to..." "Tell Ms. Hale that I don't need her charity or her assumptions." He snapped the phone shut, cutting off whatever response was coming. Jorge whistled low. "You just hung up on somebody's secretary, man. You've got balls." "It's nothing," Ethan muttered, shoving the phone back in his pocket. But it wasn't nothing, and he knew it. Victoria Hale wasn't the type to take no for an answer. He'd seen it in her eyes last night, that particular combination of curiosity and determination that meant she'd already decided what she wanted. And apparently what she wanted was him. The phone rang again. This time when he answered, it was Victoria herself. "Mr. Cole, I understand you're a man who values directness, so let me be direct. I owe you my life. The least you can do is let me buy you coffee. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. And since this is quite literally a matter of life and death, my life specifically, I think my opinion carries slightly more weight. The car will be there at 2 p.m. If you're not in it, I'll come to the construction site myself, and I promise you, Mr. Cole, I will make quite a scene. The line went dead. Ethan stared at the phone, then at Jorge, who was grinning. Sounds like you've got yourself an admirer, hermano. It's not like that. Sure it's not. That's why some rich lady is sending cars for you. Ethan went back to work, but his mind kept drifting. The black SUV from last night, he'd seen it again this morning, parked 3 blocks from Lily's school. Could be coincidence, could be paranoia, or it could be that his past was finally catching up with him. At 1:55 p.m., Mike approached him. Cole, you're done for the day. My shift doesn't end until... You're done, Mike repeated not unkindly. Look, I don't know who you pissed off or impressed, but I got a call from the general contractor who got a call from the property owner who apparently got a call from someone way up the food chain. You're getting paid for the full day plus overtime, and there's a very expensive car waiting for you outside. Ethan looked through the chain-link fence. A black town car idled at the curb, the driver standing beside it in a suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month. This is bullshit, Ethan said. Mike shrugged. Maybe, but it's bullshit that's paying you overtime. Go on, get out of here. And Cole, try not to look so much like you're heading to your execution. The interior of the town car smelled like leather and money. The driver, a professional-looking man in his 40s, didn't attempt conversation, which Ethan appreciated. They drove north, leaving the industrial sprawl behind, entering neighborhoods where the houses had gates and the cars had names Ethan couldn't pronounce. They pulled up to a coffee shop that looked nothing like the Starbucks Ethan occasionally splurged on. This place was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of carefully crafted casualness that only money could buy. Victoria was already there sitting in a corner booth, and for a moment Ethan didn't recognize her. Gone was the power suit, the severe hairstyle, the armor of corporate authority. She wore jeans and a cashmere sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, more like a real person, and less like a force of nature. "Mr. Cole," she said, standing as he approached. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" She smiled. "There's always a choice. Please sit." Ethan sat feeling underdressed in his work clothes, concrete dust still clinging to his boots. A waitress appeared immediately as if summoned by magic. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee," Ethan said. "Black." "The same," Victoria said. After the waitress left, she studied him with those sharp eyes. "You're angry. You disrupted my work day, threatened to make a scene, and basically forced me to come here. Yeah, I'm angry." "Good," she said, surprising him. "I prefer honesty. It's refreshing. Do you know how many people tell me exactly what they think I want to hear every single day? That sounds like a you problem." She laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. "It is. It absolutely is. But here's the thing, Mr. Cole Ethan. Can I call you Ethan? It's my name." "Ethan, then. Last night you saved my life, and I don't mean in some abstract metaphorical way. That man would have taken me, and based on the police report I received this morning, he had a history of violence against women. Assault, rape, murder. So when I say you saved my life, I mean it quite literally." The coffee arrived. Ethan wrapped his hands around the mug, appreciating the warmth. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," Victoria said firmly. "You did what you were trained to do. Delta Force right, or was it something even more classified?" Ethan's expression didn't change. "I was regular Army, infantry." "Of course you were." She pulled out a tablet, swiping through screens. Ethan James Cole, born March 15, 1987, in Detroit. Enlisted at 18, served for 8 years. Honorable discharge in 2019. Married Sarah Martinez in 2017. Daughter Lily, born the same year. Sarah died of pancreatic cancer 3 years ago. She looked up. "The official record, such as it is. You had no right. But then there are the gaps. she continued as if he hadn't spoken. 2 years after your discharge where you simply don't exist. No employment records, no address, no credit cards, nothing. And your military record is so heavily redacted it might as well be written in black marker. Then you appear in Chicago with a dying wife and a baby working construction living in poverty. Why? None of your business. I'm making it my business. She leaned forward. Because here's what I think. I think you were something special, something dangerous, and something happened that made you walk away from it all. Maybe it was Sarah getting sick. Maybe it was Lily being born. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Something that has you looking over your shoulder, checking for surveillance, noting exits whenever you enter a room. Ethan's eyes narrowed. She was more observant than he'd given her credit for. I think you're bored out of your mind working construction, she continued. I think you're slowly going broke trying to give your daughter a decent life. And I think you're tired of pretending to be nobody when you're clearly somebody. You don't know anything about me. I know you speak Arabic, Pashto, and Farsi fluently. That was in the unredacted part of your file. I know you have a genius-level IQ based on your ASVAB scores. I know you're qualified in combat medicine, explosives, communications, and God knows what else. And I know you're wasting away on a construction site when you could be doing something that actually matters. Construction matters, Ethan said stubbornly. It's honest work. It is, Victoria agreed. But it's not your work. Your work is protecting people, saving people, being the one who runs toward danger when everyone else runs away. That life is over. Is it because, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're just on pause, waiting for something or someone? Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Lily's school. His blood went cold. I need to take this, he said, already standing. Mr. Cole. This is Principal Morrison. There's been an incident. Lily is fine, she added quickly, but we need you to come to the school immediately. What kind of incident? A man tried to pick her up from the playground. He said he was a friend of yours that you'd sent him. Lily didn't believe him and ran to a teacher, but Mr. Cole, he had a gun. Ethan was already moving Victoria forgotten, but she was right behind him, matching his pace. What's wrong? She asked. Someone tried to take Lily. The words came out sharp, clipped, his military bearing taking over completely. I need to get to her school. My car's faster than a taxi, Victoria said, pulling out her phone. James! Bring the car around. Now. They were in her BMW and moving within 30 seconds, Victoria driving with surprising skill through the afternoon traffic. Ethan's mind was racing, running through possibilities, scenarios, threat assessments. Talk to me, Victoria said, taking a corner at speed. Who would try to take your daughter? I don't know. Bullshit. You know exactly who, or at least you have an idea. Ethan glanced at her, this woman he'd known for less than 24 hours, who was currently breaking several traffic laws to get him to his daughter. There are people who think I'm dead, people who need to keep thinking that. From your military service. From after. The 2 years you couldn't find anything about. I was doing things that didn't officially happen for people who don't officially exist. And then I found out Sarah was pregnant, and I wanted out. But you don't just walk away from that life. So I made a deal. I died. Officially. Killed in a training accident that never made the news because the training never happened. Victoria ran a red light, horns blaring behind them. But someone figured out you're alive. Maybe. Or maybe this is something else. Maybe someone from my past is using Lily to draw me out. His hands clenched into fists. If they've hurt her... You said the principal told you she was fine. Fine is relative when someone pulls a gun at an elementary school. They screeched to a halt outside the school. Police cars were everywhere, lights flashing. Parents clustered behind the police tape, some crying, others on phones. Ethan was out of the car before it fully stopped, his eyes scanning for threats, even as he pushed through the crowd. Sir, you can't... A uniformed officer started. Ethan Cole, my daughter's in there. The officer checked his list, then lifted the tape. Principal's office. Ethan found Lily sitting on a bench outside the office, a female detective crouched beside her, showing her pictures on a tablet. When she saw him, Lily launched herself into his arms. Daddy! He held her tight, checking her for injuries even as he murmured reassurances. She was okay, scared, but okay. Mr. Cole? Principal Morrison approached her face grave. Thank you for coming so quickly. What happened? Lily was on the playground with her class when a man approached the fence. He called her by name, said you'd send him to pick her up early, said there was a family emergency. What did he look like? The principal gestured to the detective who stood and extended her hand. Detective Rivera, we have security footage. The man was Caucasian, approximately 6 feet tall, dark hair, wearing a black suit. He had a vehicle parked nearby, a black SUV with tinted windows. Ethan's blood went cold. The same SUV from last night. When Lily refused to go with him, he became agitated, Detective Rivera continued. One of the teachers saw him reach into his jacket. We believe he was going for a weapon. The teacher called for lockdown immediately, and the man fled. Did you get plates? Fake. We're running facial recognition now, but... She shrugged. These things took time. Mr. Cole, Principal Morrison said carefully, is there something we should know? Is Lily in danger? Before he could answer, Victoria stepped forward. Ethan had almost forgotten she was there. I'm Victoria Hale, she said, her CEO voice in full effect. I'm Mr. Cole's employer. We'll be providing private security for Lily, effective immediately. We will, Ethan started. Victoria shot him a look that said, shut up and let me handle this. To the principal, she continued, Mr. Cole has been consulting on a sensitive corporate security matter. It's possible this incident is related. We take the safety of our employees and their families very seriously. The principal looked relieved to have someone taking charge. Of course. Whatever you need. Daddy? Lily whispered, her face still buried in his shoulder. The man knew things. He knew about Mommy. He knew we lived in Chicago. He knew my teacher's name. Ethan's jaw tightened. This wasn't random. This was targeted. Someone had been watching them gathering intelligence. We need to go, he said to Victoria. Now. She nodded already on her phone. James, bring the car around to the back entrance. Alert the security team we're implementing Protocol 7. Ethan didn't know what Protocol 7 was, but he appreciated the efficiency. They moved quickly. Detective Rivera escorting them through the school to a rear exit where the BMW was waiting. We'll need a statement, Rivera said. Tomorrow, Victoria said firmly. Mr. Cole will come to the station tomorrow. They were in the car and moving before Rivera could object. Lily sat between them in the back seat, clinging to Ethan's hand. Where are we going? Ethan asked. Somewhere safe, Victoria said. My penthouse has better security than Fort Knox. You and Lily can stay there until we figure out what's happening. We can't. Yes, you can, and you will, because someone just tried to kidnap your daughter, and your apartment might as well have a welcome mat for anyone who wants to hurt you. She was right, and Ethan hated that she was right. His apartment was indefensible ground floor, multiple entry points, no security system. He'd chosen it because it was cheap, not because it was safe. Why are you doing this? He asked. Victoria looked at him, and for a moment her CEO mask slipped. Because you saved my life. Because Lily doesn't deserve to be in danger. And because... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. Because I recognize something in you. The weight of secrets. The cost of being someone you're not. I know what it's like to have a past that won't stay buried. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer that, Victoria said sharply. But Ethan had already flipped it open. Yeah. Hello, Ethan. The voice was familiar, though he hadn't heard it in 6 years. Colonel Marcus Webb, his former handler from his time with the activity of the Army's most classified intelligence unit. I heard you had some excitement today. What do you want, Webb? To help, believe it or not. You've been burned, Ethan. Someone leaked your location, your new identity, everything. Every enemy you ever made now knows exactly where to find you. Who? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Could be the Russians. You did kill General Volkov's son in Chechnya. Could be the Iranians. They never did forgive you for that thing in Tehran. Or it could be someone closer to home. Someone who thinks you know something you shouldn't. I kept my end of the deal. I disappeared. You did. But resurrection is a tricky business. Once word gets out that you're alive, well, let's just say there's a significant bounty on your head. 8 figures last I heard. Ethan felt Victoria's eyes on him, saw Lily watching with wide, frightened eyes. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "Come back in. Let us protect you, both of you. The last time I trusted you, my wife was dying, and you wouldn't let me come home to see her. That was different." Ethan hung up. His hands were shaking just slightly. 8 figures. Someone was willing to pay tens of millions of dollars for him. Dead or alive, Webb hadn't said. "Daddy!" Lily's voice was small. "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby." He lied. "Everything's going to be fine." Victoria's penthouse was on the 50th floor of a building that looked like it had been carved from black glass and steel. The security in the lobby was subtle but comprehensive metal detectors, cameras guards who looked like they could handle themselves in a fight. "Mr. Cole and his daughter will be staying with me," Victoria told the security chief, a man who looked like he'd been carved from granite. "Indefinitely, full protocols." "Yes, ma'am." The private elevator required a key code and a thumbprint. Ethan noticed the bulletproof glass, the emergency phone, the subtle bulge in the ceiling that suggested defensive countermeasures. "You weren't kidding about the security tech," he said. "I've made enemies over the years," Victoria said simply. "Hostile takeovers, layoffs, whistleblowers. The pharmaceutical industry isn't exactly known for its ethics." The penthouse itself was stunning floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of Chicago modern furniture that looked like art, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. Lily's eyes went wide. "This is like a castle in the sky," she whispered. Victoria smiled, the expression softening her face. "Would you like to see your room? My room?" "Of course, every princess needs her own room in the castle." She led them down a hallway to a guest room that was bigger than Ethan's entire apartment. It had its own bathroom, a walk-in closet, and a view that stretched to the lake. "This is too much," Ethan started. "It's exactly enough," Victoria said firmly. "Lily, there are some clothes in the closet that might fit you. I had my assistant do some shopping, and there's a tablet on the nightstand with games and movies loaded on it." Lily looked at Ethan, seeking permission. He nodded, and she ran to explore the closet. Victoria led him back to the living room, pouring 2 glasses of what looked like very expensive scotch without asking if he wanted one. "Talk," she said, handing him a glass. "Who's trying to kill you?" "I don't know." "But you have ideas." Ethan took a sip of the scotch. It burned pleasantly. "Could be a lot of people. I spent 6 years doing things that officially never happened. Black ops, off-the-books missions, the kind of stuff that keeps politicians' hands clean and soldiers' consciences dirty. And someone wants you dead because of something you did, or something I know, or something they think I know." He stared out at the city lights. "I thought I'd covered my tracks. New identity, new city, new life, but someone found me. The question is who, and why now? The why is easier. Last night I exposed myself. Saved You got on the news. My face even briefly was out there. Someone recognized me." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "This is my fault." "No, I made the choice to intervene. I knew the risks. But if you hadn't, what gotten robbed? That's not how fault works." She moved to stand beside him at the window. "What are you going to do, Protect Lily. Everything else is secondary." "That's not a plan, that's a goal." "Then I need to figure out who's coming for me. The man at the school, he was professional but not elite. Probably hired help, which means someone's paying for this, not doing it themselves. So we follow the money." Ethan looked at her. You saved my life. Now someone's trying to take yours. That makes this my problem too. This isn't your fight. I'm making it my fight." She turned to face him fully. "I have resources you need. Money, connections, security. You have skills I need. Combat training, tactical knowledge, the ability to see threats before they materialize. We can help each other. And what do you get out of it?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Have you ever felt like you're drowning in your own success? Like you've built this perfect life, this perfect image, and it's slowly suffocating you?" The question was so unexpected, so honest, that Ethan didn't know how to respond. "I built my company from nothing," she continued. Took over when my father died, when everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced, too female. I proved them all wrong, but somewhere along the way I became the job. CEO 24/7, no real friends, no real relationships, no real life. Just board meetings and profit margins and strategic acquisitions. And you think helping me will change that? I think, Wes, she said carefully, that last night was the first time in years I felt really alive. When that gun was pointed at me, when you came out of nowhere like some avenging angel, when everything was chaos and violence and absolutely real, I felt more in those 10 seconds than I felt in the last 10 years. Ethan studied her face, seen past the polish to something raw underneath. You're an adrenaline junkie. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of being safe. She took a sip of her scotch. Either way, I'm involved now. Someone called me last night, warned me to stay away from you. That means they're watching me too, so we might as well face this together. Before Ethan could respond, there was a massive explosion somewhere below them. The building shook, lights flickered, and through the windows they could see smoke billowing from what looked like the parking garage. Ethan was already moving, grabbing Lily from her room, his mind switching into combat mode. That was a car bomb. They're trying to flush us out. Victoria was on her phone. Security report. What do you mean you've lost contact with the lobby? Another explosion closer this time. The lights went out completely, emergency lighting kicking in a second later, bathing everything in red. They're taking out the building's infrastructure, Ethan said. Power communication security. This isn't some hired thug. This is a professional assault team. The panic room, Victoria said, already moving. This way. She led them to what looked like a normal wall, pressing her hand against a hidden scanner. The wall swung open, revealing a reinforced room with its own power supply, communications equipment, and enough supplies to last a week. Get in, Ethan said, pushing Lily toward the room. What about you? I'm going to buy us time. He checked the Glock he'd taken from the security desk downstairs, a habit from his old life, always know where the weapons are. Lock yourselves in. Don't come out for anyone but me. Ethan, lock it. The wall swung shut and Ethan heard the heavy bolts engage. Good. They were safe. For now. He moved through the penthouse lights, off using the emergency lighting to navigate. His training came back like muscle memory, heel to toe, controlling his breathing weapon at low ready. The main elevator dinged. They were here. The doors opened and smoke grenades rolled out, filling the entryway with thick gray clouds. Ethan dropped to one knee behind a marble counter, waiting. Through the smoke, he could see shapes moving, 4, maybe 5 operators in full tactical gear, professional, organized, lethal. But they'd made one mistake. They'd assumed he was just some washed-up special forces guy living on past glory. They were about to learn differently. The first operator came through the smoke weapon, sweeping left. Ethan let him pass, then rose silently behind him. His arm went around the man's throat, a blood choke that dropped him in 3 seconds. Ethan took his weapon, an HK-416 with a suppressor, and his radio. Alpha 1 report, a voice crackled through the earpiece. Ethan keyed the mic, coughing slightly to disguise his voice. Area clear, moving to secondary. Copy. 3 left, maybe 4. He moved through the smoke like a ghost, using their own concealment against them. The second operator was checking doors methodically. Ethan put 2 rounds, center mass, the suppressor, reducing the shots to whispers. The man dropped. Shots fired. Alpha 2 is down. Now they knew he was hunting them. The remaining operators pulled back, forming a defensive position near the elevator. Smart. But Ethan knew the penthouse layout, now had memorized it the moment they'd arrived. There was another way around. He moved through the kitchen, staying low, circling behind them. Through the service corridor that Victoria probably didn't even know existed. Rich people never paid attention to how the help moved around. He came out behind them, catching them focused on the wrong direction. The firefight was brief and violent. Ethan had surprise and superior position. They had numbers and armor. When the smoke cleared, literally, 2 more operators were down, but Ethan had taken a round in the shoulder. The bullet caught by the vest he'd grabbed from the first operator, but still enough to crack ribs. The last operator was backing toward the elevator, speaking rapidly into his radio. Mission abort, target is hot. Repeat, target is... Ethan's shot took him in the throat, cutting off the transmission. Silence fell, broken only by the wail of sirens approaching from below. Ethan moved back to the panic room, keying the intercom. "It's me. It's over." The door opened and Lily ran out, throwing herself at him. He caught her with his good arm, holding her tight. "Are you hurt?" Victoria asked, noting the blood on his shirt. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Before he could respond, his phone rang. Webb again. "Impressive, Ethan. 5 operators in less than 3 minutes. You haven't lost a step." "Who sent them?" "That's the interesting part. They were Russians. Spetsnaz specifically. Seems General Volkov never forgave you for his son. After 6 years. He only found out you were alive yesterday. Someone sent him your picture from the news along with your current location. Someone wanted to use the Russians to do their dirty work." "Who?" "Still working on that. But Ethan, this is just the beginning. Once word spreads that you're alive, everyone you ever crossed is going to come calling. You need to come in." "No." "Then you need to run, take your daughter, and disappear again." Ethan looked at Victoria, who was checking Lily for injuries with surprising gentleness, at this woman who'd opened her home to them, who'd stood by them even when bullets started flying. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe it's time to stop running." He hung up, then turned to Victoria. "We need to leave. Now. The police will be here soon and I can't answer their questions. Not honestly." "I have a place," she said immediately. "A cabin in Wisconsin. Off the books purchased through shell companies. No one knows about it." "Why do you have an off-the-books cabin?" She gave him a wry smile. "Everyone needs a bolt hole. Even CEOs." They left through the service elevator, Victoria's security team, what was left of it, providing cover. The garage was a war zone, several cars burning debris everywhere. But Victoria's backup vehicle, an armored SUV, was untouched in a separate section. As they drove through the night, Lily asleep between them, Ethan allowed himself a moment of truth. He was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending to be nobody. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe it was time to stop being the prey and start being the predator. But first he had to keep Lily safe. Everything else, revenge, justice, even his growing attraction to the complicated woman beside him, would have to wait. The road stretched out ahead of them, dark and uncertain. Behind them, Chicago burned with the aftermath of violence. And somewhere out there in the shadows, enemies old and new were planning their next move. The war for Ethan Cole's life had begun. The armored SUV cut through the darkness of Interstate 94, its headlights carving a path through the Wisconsin countryside. 3 hours had passed since they'd fled Chicago. 3 hours of silence, broken only by Lily's soft breathing as she slept curled against Ethan's side. Victoria drove with focused precision, checking the mirrors every few seconds, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "She's out cold," Ethan said quietly, adjusting the blanket around his daughter. The adrenaline was finally wearing off, leaving him aware of every bruise, every scraped knuckle, the burning ache where the bullet had impacted his vest. "She's been through hell," Victoria replied, her voice soft. "How do you explain something like this to a 7-year-old? You don't. You tell her bad people made a mistake, that they're gone now that she's safe. You lie because the truth would destroy her innocence and she's already lost too much." Victoria glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Is that what you've been doing, lying to protect her?" "Every single day. She thinks her dad works construction. She doesn't know about the nightmares, the hypervigilance, the reason I check every window and door 3 times before bed. She doesn't know her father has killed more people than she's had birthdays." The confession hung between them in the darkness. Victoria took an exit onto a smaller highway, the trees pressing closer on both sides. "My father was like you," she said unexpectedly. "Not military, but complicated. He built his pharmaceutical empire on buried bodies, metaphorically speaking. Hostile takeovers that destroyed families, drugs rushed to market despite safety concerns, whistleblowers who mysteriously disappeared or recanted. I didn't know any of it until after he died, when I inherited not just his company, but his secrets." "What did you do?" "I tried to make it right. Settled lawsuits, quietly implemented new safety protocols, cleaned house. But some stains don't wash out. Some ghosts don't stay buried." She paused, navigating a sharp turn. "There's a man, Viktor Koval. Russian oligarch, runs one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Eastern Europe. My father screwed him on a deal in the 90s, stole formulas, buried patents. Koval never forgot. He's been trying to destroy my company ever since. You think he's connected to this? I don't know, but the timing is suspicious. Last week I rejected his latest buyout offer. Yesterday you saved my life. Today Russians try to kill you. Coincidences are rarely coincidental in our world. Ethan processed this, his tactical mind already working through possibilities. Pull over. What? Pull over. Now. Victoria didn't argue, finding a dark rest stop and pulling in. Ethan carefully extracted himself from Lily's grip, stepping out into the cold night air. Victoria followed. What's wrong? Your phone, give it to me. She handed it over without question. Ethan popped the back to remove the battery and SIM card, then did the same with his own phone. They're tracking us, he said. Has to be. Those operators found your penthouse too quickly, knew exactly which floor, which unit. Someone's been watching, gathering intel. My security team is either compromised or incompetent, maybe both. He tossed both phones into a nearby trash can. From now on, we're completely dark. No electronic trail, no credit cards, nothing they can trace. I have cash in the cabin. And weapons. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Weapons? I told you everyone needs a bolt hole. Mine just happens to be well equipped. They got back in the SUV, Lily stirring slightly but not waking. As they drove deeper into the Wisconsin wilderness, Victoria told him more about the cabin. It had been her father's, originally a place he'd used for meetings that couldn't happen in boardrooms. She'd discovered it after his death, along with enough secrets to bury his legacy forever. Why didn't you? Ethan asked. Bury the legacy because it would have destroyed the company, put thousands out of work. My father was a bastard, but the people who work for Hale Pharmaceuticals aren't. They're good people trying to make medicines that save lives. I couldn't punish them for his sins. The roads grew narrower, civilization falling away, until there was nothing but forest and darkness. Finally, Victoria turned onto what could barely be called a road, more of a trail really, the SUV's four-wheel drive grinding through mud and fallen leaves. The cabin appeared, suddenly materializing from the darkness like something out of a fairy tale. It was bigger than Ethan had expected, all dark wood and stone built to blend into the landscape. No lights, no signs of life. Motion sensors will trigger when we get closer, Victoria said. Interior lights only, no exterior illumination. My father was paranoid about satellite surveillance. Smart man. They parked in a concealed garage attached to the cabin. Ethan carried Lily inside her dead weight, familiar from countless nights of carrying her from car to apartment when she'd fallen asleep. The interior was rustic but comfortable, with high-end security touches that most people wouldn't notice: reinforced doors, bulletproof glass sightlines that covered every approach. Victoria showed him to a bedroom, helping him settle Lily into bed. The little girl mumbled something about stars and diamonds, then curled into the pillow, safe in her dreams. Back in the main room, Victoria built a fire, while Ethan checked the perimeter. When he returned, she had 2 glasses of whiskey waiting and a first aid kit laid out on the coffee table. Take off your shirt, she said. I'm fine. You're bleeding through your jacket. Take it off. Ethan complied, wincing as he pulled the fabric away from dried blood. The impact from the bullet had left a massive bruise across his ribs, purple-black and spreading. Several cuts from flying glass decorated his arms and chest, and his knuckles were raw from the close-quarters fighting. Victoria worked in silence, cleaning wounds with practiced efficiency. Her fingers were gentle but sure, and Ethan found himself studying her face in the firelight. Without the corporate armor, without the makeup and power suits, she was beautiful in a different way. Softer, more real. You've done this before, he observed. Boarding school in Switzerland. I was training to be a doctor before my father decided I needed an MBA instead. She applied antiseptic to a particularly deep cut, causing him to hiss. Sorry. I've had worse. I'm sure you have. She taped gauze over the wound, her fingers lingering for a moment on his chest. The scars tell quite a story. Each one's a lesson learned. What lesson is this one? She traced a puckered scar near his shoulder, clearly from a bullet. Trust no one in Kandahar. And this, a long knife wound across his ribs. Never underestimate a wounded enemy. And this, Her finger found a surgical scar newer than the others. That Sarah was sick and I wasn't there. His voice went flat. Kidney donation. Tried to buy her more time for treatment. Didn't work. Victoria's hand stilled. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't give her cancer. He pulled his shirt back on, needing the barrier between them. What's the plan? We can't stay here forever. Why not? I have enough supplies for months. It's completely off the grid. We can wait them out. That's not how this works. Whoever wants me dead won't stop. They'll keep coming, keep hunting, and everyone around me becomes a target. He looked toward the hallway where Lily slept. I should leave. Take her somewhere far away, start over again. But Mama, where and with what money? You have maybe a few $100s to your name. No car, no clean identity, no resources. You'd be caught within days. She was right, and he hated that she was right. So what do you suggest? Victoria moved to a painting on the wall, swinging it aside to reveal a safe. She entered a combination, pulling out stacks of cash, multiple passports, and several weapons. We go on the offensive, she said. Find out who's behind this and stop them before they stop us. You've been watching too many action movies. Have I? She turned to face him, firelight dancing in her eyes. You said someone leaked your location, your new identity. That's not something a foreign enemy could do. That's an inside job. Someone in your own government wants you dead. Ethan had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it said out loud made it real. Webb, my old handler, he's the only one who knew where I was. So we start there. Find out why he burned you.
Well, we can't just interrogate a CIA officer. The activity isn't CIA, Victoria said, surprising him with her knowledge. It's Army intelligence, completely black answers only to Joint Special Operations Command, and I happen to know someone who might be able to help. Who? My godfather, General Thomas Morrison, retired, former JSOC commander. He owes me several favors. Ethan stared at her. Your godfather ran JSOC. My father had interesting friends, powerful friends, friends who needed medications off the books for operations that didn't officially exist. She pulled out a satellite phone from the safe. One call and we might get answers. Or you might get us killed. If Morrison is part of this, he's not. Tom Morrison is many things, but he's honorable. He wouldn't burn an operator without cause. Before Ethan could stop her, she was dialing. The conversation was brief, conducted in code phrases and careful language. When she hung up, her expression was grave. He'll meet us tomorrow night, Chicago. Said there are things we need to know, things he can't say over the phone. It's a trap. Maybe. Or maybe it's our only chance to find out what's really happening. They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Finally, Ethan spoke. Why are you really doing this? And don't give me the line about owing me for saving your life. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. You want the truth? I've been dead inside for years. Going through the motions, playing the role of CEO, of Ice Queen, of untouchable success story. Then last night happened, and for the first time in forever, I felt something. Fear, yes, but also alive. Truly alive. She looked at him, vulnerability cracking her composed facade. I've built walls around myself so high that no one can get in. But you walked through them like they weren't even there. You saw me not the CEO, not the billionaire, just the woman who was scared and needed help. And you didn't hesitate. Anyone would have... No, she interrupted. They wouldn't. They would have calculated the risk, considered the liability, worried about their own safety. You just acted. No hesitation, no doubt, just pure instinct to protect. She moved closer to him on the couch, close enough that he could smell her perfume, mixed with cordite and fear sweat from earlier. I've been surrounded by men who want my money, my power, my influence. You're the first one who wanted nothing from me except to keep me safe. Victoria, I know, she said. I know this is insane. I know we've known each other for less than 48 hours. I know you're still grieving your wife, still trying to protect your daughter, still fighting ghosts I can't even see. But I also know that when you look at me, you see me, the real me. And that's worth more than all the money in my accounts.
The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Ethan wanted to reach for her, wanted to lose himself in something other than violence and fear, wanted to pretend for just a moment that he was a normal man with a normal life. But then Lily screamed. Ethan was moving before the sound fully registered, sprinting down the hallway with Victoria close behind. He burst into the bedroom to find Lily sitting up in bed, eyes wide with terror, pointing at the window. "There's someone out there," she whispered, "watching us." Ethan moved to the window, staying to the side, peering out into the darkness. At first he saw nothing, then movement. A shadow against shadows barely visible, but there. "Victoria, get Lily to the safe room," he said quietly, his voice shifting into command mode. "The safe room is behind the bookshelf in the study. Your father's paranoia, remember? Take her there and lock yourselves in." Victoria didn't argue, scooping Lily up and carrying her out. Ethan grabbed one of the weapons from the safe, a Sig Sauer P226 with a suppressor, and moved to the back door. The forest was silent. Too silent. No insects, no nightbirds, nothing. Someone had disturbed the natural order, and nature was holding its breath. Ethan slipped outside, becoming part of the darkness. This was his element, where the civilized man fell away and the predator emerged. He'd hunted Taliban fighters through Afghan mountains, Iranian operatives through Tehran streets, Russian Spetsnaz through Chechen forests. One person in Wisconsin woods shouldn't be a problem, except it wasn't one person. He spotted the first one 15 meters out using thermal imaging scope, the heat signature clear against the cold forest. The second was 20 meters to the left, covering his partner. Professional spacing, professional equipment. But they'd made a mistake. They were hunting Ethan Cole, construction worker, not Ghost, his operational call sign from his activity days. He circled wide using skills learned in places where failure meant death. The forest floor was covered in decades of pine needles, soft and silent under his feet. The first target never heard him coming. Ethan's arm went around the man's throat, cutting off sound and blood flow simultaneously. The body went limp in seconds. He lowered it gently, taking the man's rifle, another HK-416, these people had good taste in weapons, and his radio. "Bravo 2 status," a voice crackled. Ethan keyed the mic twice, the universal signal for all clear, maintaining silence. The second operator was harder. He was in a good position back to a large tree covering multiple approaches. But he was focused on the cabin, watching for someone trying to escape, not someone hunting him. The shot was clean, suppressed, precise. The man dropped without a sound. "Bravo team report," the radio demanded. Ethan ignored it, moving toward where he'd heard the transmission originate. The command element would be further back, probably with a vehicle for quick extraction. He found them 2 more operators, and what looked like a team leader near a black van hidden on an old logging road. They were just starting to realize something was wrong. Weapons coming up. Heads on swivels. Too late. Ethan put 2 rounds through the windshield, taking out the driver. The others scattered, seeking cover, returning fire. The forest erupted with the sound of automatic weapons' muzzle flashes strobing in the darkness. But Ethan was already moving, flanking left, using their muzzle flashes to track them. One operator made the mistake of staying still too long. Ethan's shot caught him center mass, spinning him into a tree. The team leader was good, very good. He'd found solid cover and was laying down disciplined fire, trying to pin Ethan while calling for backup. "Need immediate QRF at grid 774. Team is down. Repeat, team is down. Ghost is active. Repeat, Ghost is..." Ethan's bullet cut the transmission short. Silence fell over the forest, broken only by the ringing in his ears. He moved through the killing ground, methodically checking bodies, gathering intelligence. They all had the same tattoo on their wrists, a small scorpion. Russian mafia, but high-end, connected to government services. One was still alive, barely blood bubbling from his chest with each breath. Ethan knelt beside him. "Who sent you?" The man coughed, blood speckling his lips. You're supposed to be nobody, just construction worker." "Who sent you?" Ethan repeated. "Doesn't matter. Contract is out, open bounty. Every operator in the world, coming for you. Volkov's money, but not just his." The man's eyes were glazing. Your own people. They want you. Dead. Ooh.
Why? But the man was gone, his last breath rattling out into the cold Wisconsin night. Ethan stood looking back toward the cabin. How many more would come? How many more nights would Lily wake to gunfire and death? How long before their luck ran out? He made his way back inside, knocking on the safe room door in a specific pattern. Victoria opened it, Lily clinging to her hand. "Is it over?" Victoria asked. "For tonight?" He looked at his daughter, her eyes too old for her young face. "Pack everything. We leave in 10 minutes. "Where will we go?" Lily asked in a small voice. Ethan pulled her into a hug, feeling her trembling against him. "Somewhere safe, baby. I promise." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. There was no safe place, not anymore. Webb had burned him thoroughly, completely. Every intelligence service, every mercenary group, every contract killer with dreams of a big payday would be looking for him. "The meeting with Morrison," Victoria said quietly. "It's our only chance." She was right. They needed answers, needed to know why he'd been burned, who was really behind this. But walking into Chicago, into what could easily be a trap, felt like suicide. "Daddy," Lily said, looking up at him. "The bad men, they're not going to stop, are they?" He wanted to lie, wanted to protect her from the truth, but she'd seen too much, been through too much. She deserved honesty. "No, baby, they're not going to stop." "Then we have to stop them first." The simple clarity of a child's logic. Victoria laughed, dark and bitter. "Out of the mouths of babes," she said. "Your daughter's right, Ethan. We can't keep running, can't keep reacting. We need to take the fight to them." "That's not not possible, not safe." "Nothing about this is safe. At least if we're attacking, we have the element of surprise." Ethan looked between them. His daughter too young to be this brave, and this woman he barely knew, who'd thrown her lot in with them completely. They were right. Defense only worked if you had a position worth defending. Out here constantly moving, they were just prey waiting to be caught. "All right," he said finally. "We go to Chicago. We meet Morrison. We get answers. And then we hunt." Victoria finished her CEO voice, returning the one that had crushed competitors and built empires. "We find whoever did this, and we end them." "It won't be that simple. These are professionals with resources, with everything except what we have," Victoria interrupted. "They have money and guns and numbers. But we have something they don't expect. We have you trained by the best declared dead, but very much alive. We have me with connections and resources they don't know about. And we have her," she gestured to Lily, "giving us a reason to fight that goes beyond survival." She was right in her own way. The enemy, whoever they were, expected him to run to hide, to try to disappear again. They didn't expect him to come straight at them. "There's something else," Victoria said, moving to another hidden panel in the wall. This one revealed a small arsenal, rifles, handguns, tactical gear. "My father didn't just meet with people here. He trained here, prepared for a war he thought was coming, a war between those who control the world's resources and those who want to take them." "Your father sounds like he was paranoid." "Paranoid and right aren't mutually exclusive." She pulled out a tablet, one of the old ones not connected to any network. Before he died, he compiled files on everyone he considered a threat. Government officials, rivals, CEOs, intelligence operatives. "If your handler is in here," she powered on the device, scrolling through encrypted files. Suddenly, she stopped, her face paling. "What is it?" She turned the tablet toward him. There on the screen was a photograph of Colonel Marcus Webb, younger but unmistakable. The file beneath it was extensive operations connections, financial records. "Your father knew Webb. More than knew him. According to this, Webb was on his payroll. Off-the-books medical supplies for black ops in exchange for making certain problems disappear." She kept reading, her expression growing more troubled. "Ethan, 3 weeks ago, there was a congressional hearing, classified, but my father had sources. They were investigating illegal operations, war crimes. Your name came up." "That's impossible. Everything I did was sanctioned." "Not according to this. Someone testified that you went rogue in Pakistan, killed a village elder who was actually a CIA asset.
That you were running your own operation selling weapons to the highest bidder. That's a lie. I believe you. But if Congress believes it, if they think you're still alive and could testify. She looked up at him. Webb didn't burn you because someone paid him. He burned you to protect himself. Dead men can't testify. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture Ethan didn't like. Webb had set him up, created a false narrative, then tried to have him killed to keep him from defending himself. We need those files, Ethan said. Everything your father had on Webb, on the operations, on anyone involved. They're all here. But Ethan, if we use them, if we go public, then we declare war on the intelligence community. Is that what you want? Ethan thought about the bodies in the forest, about the attempt on Lily at school, about the fear in his daughter's eyes. They declared war first. I'm just going to finish it. Victoria smiled sharp and dangerous. Then we'd better get moving. Chicago is 6 hours away, and we have a lot of planning to do. As they packed loading weapons and supplies into the SUV, Ethan caught Victoria's arm. When this is over, however it ends, I want you to know what you've done for us, for Lily, is what anyone would do. No, he said firmly. It's not. You could have walked away after the jewelry store, could have let us disappear when the Russians came, could have stayed safe in your penthouse with your money and your power, but you didn't. You stood with us. That means something. She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. Then she rose up on her toes and kissed him soft and quick, a promise of possibilities if they survived. Save the gratitude for when we're all still alive, she said, pulling away. Now, let's go meet a general about a war. They drove out of the forest as dawn broke over Wisconsin, three unlikely allies bound together by violence and circumstance. Behind them, the cabin stood empty except for the bodies that would soon be discovered, a message written in blood that Ghost was no longer hiding. The road to Chicago stretched ahead, leading toward answers or death, possibly both. But for the first time since Sarah's death, Ethan felt something other than grief and duty. He felt purpose. He felt rage. And underneath it all, looking at Victoria as she drove and Lily as she slept, he felt the dangerous stirring of hope. The hunt was about to begin. The Chicago skyline emerged from the morning haze like teeth rising from gray gums, each building a monument to ambition and greed. Ethan watched it grow larger through the windshield, his hand unconsciously checking the Glock tucked under his jacket. They'd switched vehicles twice during the night, Victoria calling in favors from people who didn't ask questions, and now rode in a stolen sedan with plates that wouldn't trace back to anyone. Remember the plan. Victoria set her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She'd changed into dark jeans and a leather jacket, looking nothing like the CEO who'd walked into a jewelry store 3 days ago. Morrison will be at the Millennium Park parking garage, level B3, northwest corner. If anything feels wrong, we abort, Ethan finished. I know, but he's going to have backup. Men like Morrison don't meet potential threats alone. Tom isn't a threat, Victoria insisted, though her knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He bounced me on his knee when I was 5. He gave me away at my wedding. You were married. For about 15 minutes, historically speaking. Turned out my husband was more interested in my father's connections than me. Tom was the one who helped me get the divorce without losing half the company. Lily stirred in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket they'd bought at a truck stop. She'd been quiet since the cabin, processing everything with the eerie resilience children developed when their worlds kept ending. Are we going home? She asked softly. Not yet, baby, Ethan said, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. Soon. I don't want to go home, she said, surprising him. Home is where Mommy got sick. Home is where the bad men know to find us. The truth of it hit like a physical blow. His 7-year-old daughter had already learned what had taken him years in special operations to understand. Home was just a target. Sentiment was weakness, and safety was always temporary. Victoria's phone, a burner they'd picked up, buzzed. She checked it at a red light. Morrison's there. He says he's alone, but he's lying. Ethan scanned the streets around them, noting positions, angles, escape routes. Pull over here. We walk the rest. They parked 6 blocks from the garage, Ethan carrying Lily on his hip to keep her close. She was too big for it, but he needed her within arm's reach. Victoria walked slightly ahead, her body language casual, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders the way her hand stayed near the pistol in her jacket. The garage was a concrete cave, fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars. Level B3 was nearly empty, just a few cars scattered across the oil-stained expanse. Ethan spotted Morrison immediately, hard to miss a 6'4" former general, even when he was trying to blend in. He stood next to a black suburban Hans visible wearing civilian clothes that couldn't quite hide his military bearing, but Ethan also spotted the others. 2 men in a car 30 meters away, trying too hard to look casual. Another on the level above, visible through the gaps in the concrete. A fourth near the stairwell, positioned to cut off escape. "It's an ambush," he whispered to Victoria. "No," she said, but uncertainty colored her voice. "Tom wouldn't—" "Victoria." Morrison's voice boomed across the garage. "Thank God you're all right. Come here quickly. We don't have much time." Victoria started forward, but Ethan caught her arm. "Wait." Morrison's expression shifted, and Ethan saw him tap his thigh twice, old military signal for danger, stay back. So not an ambush. Morrison was the one who was trapped. "General Morrison," Ethan called out, his voice carrying clearly. "Why don't you tell your friends to come out? Makes conversation easier when everyone's visible." There was a moment of stillness. Then car doors opened and men emerged. Not soldiers, their movements were too fluid, too practiced. Intelligence operatives. CIA or NSA, maybe both. One of them, a thin man with silver hair and dead eyes, stepped forward. "Mr. Cole, I'm Director Harrison, National Security Agency. We need to talk." "Funny way of arranging a meeting," Ethan said, shifting Lily to his other hip, freeing his gun hand. "Necessary precautions. You've left quite a body count the last few days. 12 confirmed kills, possibly more. That draws attention." "They started it," Lily said suddenly, her child's voice cutting through the tension. "They tried to take me from school. Daddy was just protecting us." Harrison's expression didn't change. "I'm sure he was." "But national security doesn't care about individual motivations. We care about a former activity operator who was supposedly dead suddenly surfacing and killing Russian intelligence operatives on American soil." "They weren't intelligence," Ethan said. "They were Bratva, organized crime, with connections to Russian intelligence. The distinction is academic. What matters is that Moscow is asking questions and we need answers to give them." Morrison finally spoke, his voice heavy with something like regret. "Ethan, I'm sorry. They came to me, knew about the meeting. I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Victoria said coldly. "You chose wrong, Tom." "Did I? Your friend here is a walking diplomatic incident. Do you know what he did in Pakistan? In Iran? The things that were covered up to prevent international incidents." "I did my job," Ethan said quietly. "You did more than that," Harrison interjected. "You exceeded every parameter, broke every rule, and then you had the audacity to try to leave to think you could just walk away." "My wife was dying." "Irrelevant. You knew the deal when you joined the activity. You belong to us until we say otherwise." "Slavery was abolished in 1865, Victoria said. Harrison's smile was thin as paper. "Not for men like him. He signed papers, made commitments. He belongs to the United States government, and we've decided it's time for him to come home." "That's not happening," Ethan said. "I'm afraid it is. You see, Mr. Cole, you have two choices. Come with us. Voluntarily return to active duty, and your daughter goes into protective custody, safe, educated, cared for. Or resist, and we'll take you anyway, but Lily goes into the system. Foster care for the daughter of a terrorist has its own special challenges." "You son of a—" Ethan started forward, but Victoria caught his arm. "You can't do that," she said to Harrison. "I'll call every media outlet, every congressional representative. I'll burn you all down." "No, Ms. Hale, you won't. Because if you do, we'll release the files on your father, the real files. Not the sanitized version you found, but the truth. The children who died testing his drugs in Somalia. The biological weapons he developed for dictators. The mass graves in Serbia that exist because of medications he provided." Victoria went pale. "You're lying." "File designation Alpha 77 Bravo. Check with Morrison. He was there for some of it." Morrison couldn't meet Victoria's eyes, and that told her everything. "Tom," she whispered. tell me he's lying. Your father was a complicated man, Morrison said carefully. He did good things and terrible things, like all of us who operate in the shadows. Ethan felt the world tilting options disappearing one by one. They had him boxed in professionally, thoroughly, but they'd made one mistake. They'd threatened Lily in front of her. His daughter slipped from his arms, walked forward with the fearlessness of a child who'd already seen too much. She stopped directly in front of Harrison, tilting her head back to look up at him. "You're a bully," she said clearly. "Mommy told me about bullies. She said they're just scared people pretending to be strong. What are you scared of?" Harrison blinked, momentarily thrown. "Little girl, you don't understand. I understand you want to take my daddy away. I understand you're threatening us. But daddy fought real bad guys, not pretend ones in suits. So what are you scared of?" "Lily, come here," Ethan said, but she stood her ground. "Are you scared that daddy knows something? Something about you?" Harrison's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but Ethan caught it. Fear. Just a flash, but there. "Webb," Ethan said suddenly, pieces clicking together. "This isn't about Pakistan or Iran. This is about Webb." "What did he do? What are you covering up?" "Colonel Webb is a decorated officer, Colonel Webb is a traitor," Morrison interrupted suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. The general stood straighter. Some decision made. 3 months ago, we discovered Webb had been selling operational intelligence to the Chinese. Names of assets, safe house locations, ongoing operations. 37 operators and assets dead because of him. "Tom, shut your mouth," Harrison warned. "No, I'm done with this." Morrison looked at Ethan. "Webb knew you could expose him. You worked directly under him for 3 years, had access to his files, his communications. When he learned you were alive, he panicked, burned you to every intelligence service, every criminal organization he could reach. Figured if you died, his secret died with you. You knew this and did nothing." Victoria's voice was ice. "We were building a case, needed evidence that would hold up." "While people were dying," Ethan said flatly. "It's complicated." "No." Ethan cut him off. "It's simple. Webb is a traitor. You knew it. You let him burn me to protect your investigation. And now you want me to come in quietly, be a good soldier, pretend none of this happened." "It's the best option for everyone," Harrison said, but his confidence was cracking. "Here's a better option," Ethan said, pulling out the tablet Victoria had taken from the cabin. "This contains every file from Victoria's father's records. Every dirty deal, every black operation, every politician and intelligence officer on the take. Including you, Director Harrison. Seems you've been taking money from pharmaceutical companies to approve enhanced interrogation drugs. Drugs that violate the Geneva Convention." Harrison's hand moved toward his weapon. "You're bluffing. Transaction records from the Cayman Islands, September 2019 through March 2023. $2.7 million in consulting fees for a company that doesn't exist. Should I continue?" The garage fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic above. "Here's what's going to happen," Ethan continued. "Webb is going down for treason. You're going to make that happen publicly, completely. My burn notice gets rescinded, my record cleared. Lily and I get new identities, real ones bulletproof, and we disappear." "You're in no position to make demands," Harrison said, but he was sweating now. "I'm holding evidence that could destroy half the intelligence community. I'd say I'm in the perfect position. If you release that, I won't unless something happens to us. It's all set up on a dead man's switch. I don't check in every 72 hours. Everything goes to the Washington Post, New York Times, and WikiLeaks simultaneously." "You're not that sophisticated," Harrison said, but doubt colored his voice. Victoria smiled coldly. "He's not. But I am. My company developed the encryption software your agency uses. I know every backdoor, every vulnerability. The files are already uploaded, dispersed across 17 servers in 12 countries. Touch us, and the intelligence community burns." Morrison stepped forward. "Director, I recommend we take the deal. Webb is a liability anyway. This gives us a clean resolution. You're part of this, Morrison. I'm part of ending this. Too many good people have died for bad reasons. Time to stop the bleeding." Harrison looked between them, calculating odds, measuring threats. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Webb gets arrested tonight. Treason, espionage, conspiracy. He'll die in federal prison. Not good enough, Ethan said. I want him to know it was me. I want him to know that burning me was the worst mistake of his miserable life. That can be arranged. Harrison pulled out his phone, spoke quietly for several minutes. When he finished, he looked older, defeated. It's done. Webb's being arrested as we speak. Your burn notice is rescinded. New identities will be ready within 48 hours. And my father's files, Victoria asked. Buried. They never existed. Your father died a philanthropist and businessman, nothing more. I want it in writing, Ethan said. You want a receipt for blackmail. Harrison laughed bitterly. Fine. He pulled out a tablet, typed rapidly, then handed it over. Presidential finding. Signed, sealed, delivered. You're free, Mr. Cole. Congratulations. You've just beaten the United States intelligence community. I didn't beat you, Ethan said, picking up Lily again. I just reminded you that even shadows have to follow some rules. They backed away slowly, Ethan keeping his eyes on Harrison and his men until they reached the stairwell. Only when they were 3 blocks away did he allow himself to breathe. Is it over? Lily asked. That part is, Ethan said, though he knew better. Men like Harrison didn't forget, didn't forgive. They'd bought time, maybe years, but not peace. Victoria's safe house was a condo in Lincoln Park, purchased under so many shell companies that even she had trouble tracking it. They arrived as the sun set, painting the city in shades of amber and blood. While Lily showered, insisting she could do it herself, asserting independence in the only way she could control Ethan. And Victoria sat on the balcony sharing a bottle of wine that probably cost more than his monthly rent. So what now? Victoria asked. New identities, new city, new life. That's the plan. And us. Ethan looked at her. This remarkable woman who'd upended her entire life for strangers. I don't know. You have an empire to run. We'll have to disappear. Empires are overrated, she said softly. I've been thinking about selling, stepping back, finding something more meaningful to do with my life. Like what? Like helping people who can't help themselves. Like using my father's blood money to do some good. Like, she paused, vulnerable in a way he'd rarely seen, like being part of a family again. Victoria, I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but when have we done anything that wasn't... I'm not asking for promises or declarations. I'm just saying, wherever you and Lily go, there might be room for one more. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. The secure one Harrison had given him. Webb's number. He answered, putting it on speaker. You bastard! Webb's voice was raw, broken. You destroyed everything. You destroyed yourself the moment you sold out your own people. I did what I had to do. You think you're so righteous, but you've done worse. Pakistan, that village. I was following your orders, orders you gave knowing they were based on false intelligence you'd sold to the enemy. Silence. Then, how long have you known? Long enough. Goodbye, Webb. Enjoy federal prison. I hear they're particularly unkind to traitors. He hung up, feeling something release in his chest. Not peace exactly, but the closest thing to it he'd felt in years. Lily emerged from the bathroom in pajamas Victoria had bought, her hair wet and tangled. Ethan moved to help her with it, but she climbed into Victoria's lap instead. Will you braid it? She asked. Mommy used to braid it. Victoria's eyes met Ethan's over Lily's head, asking permission. He nodded throat tight as he watched Victoria's fingers work through his daughter's hair with unexpected gentleness. Victoria, Lily said quietly, are you going to stay with us? Do you want me to? Daddy's lonely. He thinks I don't know, but I do. He talks to Mommy's picture when he thinks I'm asleep, and you make him smile. Not the fake smile he does for me, but the real one. Lily, Ethan started. And I like you, Lily continued. You're brave and smart, and you smell nice. Mommy would like you too. She told me once that if something happened to her, Daddy should find someone who could take care of him because he's really bad at taking care of himself. She did not say that, Ethan protested. She did, right before the last surgery. She said you were the strongest man she knew, but everyone needs someone to be strong for them sometimes. Victoria finished the braid, tied it off with a hair tie. Your mom sounds like she was very wise. She was. She would have fought bad guys too if she wasn't sick. She was brave like you. The comparison hung in the air, Sarah's ghost suddenly present in the room, but it didn't feel wrong or intrusive. It felt like permission, like blessing. Time for bed, Ethan said softly. As he tucked Lily in, she grabbed his hand. Daddy, are we going to be okay now? He thought about lying, about promising her safety and certainty, but she'd earned the truth. I don't know, baby. But we're together and we're alive and we have people who care about us. That's more than okay. That's everything. She nodded, satisfied with the honesty. I love you, Daddy. Love you too, baby. To the stars and back. That's what Mommy used to say. I know. He found Victoria on the balcony again, city lights spread below them like a circuit board. She'd been crying. He could see the tracks on her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said. I don't mean to intrude on Sarah's memory. You're not, he said, sitting beside her. Sarah's been gone 3 years. She's not coming back, and she wouldn't want us frozen in the past. Lily's right. She would have liked you. How do you know? Because you fought for us when you didn't have to. Because you see Lily as a person, not just a kid. Because you make me remember who I was before all the death and violence. Not the soldier, not the operative, just Ethan. Victoria leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. So what do we do now? Now we wait for the new identities. Pick a place to start over. Try to build something resembling a normal life. Sounds boring, she said, but he could hear the smile in her voice. Gloriously boring, he agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city pulse with life below. Somewhere out there, Webb was being processed into federal custody. Harrison was probably destroying evidence and covering tracks. Morrison was likely having a drink, toasting the end of a dirty chapter. But here on this balcony with Victoria warm against his side and Lily safe in the next room, Ethan felt something he'd thought was lost forever. Not happiness, not yet, but the possibility of it. The promise that maybe, just maybe, the running was over. His phone buzzed, a text from Morrison. Transport arranged, tomorrow 10 a.m., airport hangar 7, new life waiting. Where do you want to go? He asked Victoria. Somewhere warm, somewhere far from here, somewhere we can just be. She lifted her head to look at him. If the offer's open? Instead of answering with words, he kissed her. It was different from the quick kiss at the cabin, slower, deeper, full of promise and potential. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Is that a yes? She asked. It's a definitely. They went inside, checked on Lily one more time. She was sprawled across the bed, one arm hanging off the edge, completely at peace. Then they retreated to Victoria's room, not for passion, but for comfort, holding each other as they talked about possibilities, about futures, about a life beyond violence and fear. Tell me about Sarah, Victoria said in the darkness. Not the sad parts, the good parts. So he did. He told her about Sarah's laugh, how she snorted when something really amused her, about her obsession with true crime podcasts, how she'd solved the cases before the reveal, about her terrible cooking but amazing baking, how she'd burn spaghetti but make perfect soufflés. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said when he finished. She was, but that chapter's closed. It's time to write a new one. What's it called, this new chapter? Ethan thought about it, about everything that had happened, everything that was yet to come. Phoenix, he said finally. It's called Phoenix, rising from the ashes. Victoria traced patterns on his chest in the darkness. I like it. Very symbolic. Sarah would have said it was too on the nose. Probably, but she's not here to edit. The truth of it should have hurt, but it didn't. Sarah was gone, had been gone for 3 years. He'd mourned her, would always love her, but she wouldn't want him frozen in grief forever. Ethan, Victoria's voice was soft, uncertain. What if they don't let us go? What if Harrison was lying? Then we run, we fight, we survive, together. You make it sound simple. The best things usually are. She was quiet for a moment, then, I love you. The words hung in the darkness, powerful and dangerous, and absolutely true. They'd known each other less than a week, had been through more trauma than most couples experienced in a lifetime. By any reasonable measure, it was too fast, too intense, too everything. But reasonable had gone out the window the moment she'd walked into that jewelry store. "I love you too," he said, meaning it completely. They made love then, slow and careful, aware of Lily sleeping nearby, aware of the weight of the moment. It wasn't passionate so much as profound, two damaged people finding solace in each other, building something new from the wreckage of their old lives. Afterward, as Victoria slept against him, Ethan stared at the ceiling and thought about Phoenix, the mythical bird that burned to ash and was reborn. He'd been living in ashes for 3 years, going through the motions, existing, but not alive. But now, with Victoria's breath warm against his neck and Lily safe in the next room, he felt the first stirrings of resurrection. Not a return to who he'd been, that man was gone forever, but something new, something possibly better. His phone lit up with another message from Morrison. "Webb's dead. Suicide in federal custody, or so the report will say." Ethan deleted the message, felt nothing about Webb's death. The man had been dead to him the moment he'd burned him. This was just making it official. Victoria stirred against him. "Can't sleep. Just thinking. About tomorrow, the day after, the future. And I think it might actually exist. For the first time in years, I think we might actually have one." She kissed his shoulder. "We do. I promise you we do." Outside Chicago sprawled in all its corrupt glory, a city built on bones and dreams in equal measure. But inside this room in this moment there was peace. Fragile, temporary, but real. Tomorrow they would run again one last time. Tomorrow they would become new people with new names and new histories. Tomorrow the resurrection would be complete. But tonight they had this, each other, the promise of something better. And for now that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. The morning arrived wrapped in fog, Chicago's skyline ghosted behind a veil of gray that seemed appropriate for a day of endings and beginnings. Ethan woke to find Victoria already dressed, standing at the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city wake up. She'd put on one of his shirts over her jeans, and something about that simple domesticity made his chest tight. "Second thoughts?" he asked, sitting up. She turned, smiled. "Third and fourth thoughts, actually, but they all lead to the same conclusion." She crossed to him, handed him a mug. "This is right. We're right." From the other room came the sound of Lily singing some pop song he didn't recognize, but she'd apparently memorized completely. Normal. So achingly normal it almost hurt. "I've been thinking," Victoria said, sitting beside him on the bed, "about the new identities. Who do you want to be?" "Alive," he said immediately. "Present. Not looking over my shoulder every 5 seconds. I mean specifically. New name, new history, you get to reinvent yourself completely." Ethan considered it. For 6 years he'd been ghost, a designation more than a person. For 3 years after that he'd been nobody, a grieving widower barely existing. Who did he want to be now? "Someone simple," he said finally. "Maybe a teacher, history or shop class. Something where I can actually build instead of destroy." "Professor Cole?" Victoria said, trying it out. "I like it, very distinguished. What about you? Who does Victoria Hale become when she stops being Victoria Hale?" Her expression shifted, vulnerable. "Someone who matters for more than her bank account. Maybe a doctor finally, or a social worker, something where I can help people directly, not through board meetings and tax-deductible donations." "Daddy!" Lily burst through the door, already dressed in jeans and a sweater Victoria had bought her. "Are we going on an airplane today?" "We are, baby." "Where are we going?" Ethan exchanged glances with Victoria. They'd discussed it last night after. Morrison had given them 3 options for relocation: Portland, Austin, or Miami. All cities big enough to disappear and small enough to build a life. "How do you feel about beaches?" Victoria asked Lily. "I love beaches." "Are there dolphins?" "Lots of dolphins," Victoria confirmed. "And sunny days and Cuban food and a really good school where you can make new friends." "Miami," Lily said, testing the word. "That's in Florida, right?" We studied it in geography. That's right, Ethan said, proud of her as always. How do you feel about living there? Lily climbed onto the bed between them, settling against Ethan's side with the casual affection of a child who'd never doubted she was loved. Will we have a house? Our own house? Yes, Victoria said, with a yard and maybe a pool and definitely room for a dog if you want one. Mommy was allergic to dogs, Lily said matter-of-factly, but she said maybe someday when I was older and could take care of it myself. She looked up at Ethan. Is someday now? The question carried more weight than she probably intended. Is someday now? Is it time to stop waiting for a life that's never coming back and start building the one that's here? Yeah, baby, he said, throat tight. Someday is now. They packed quickly, efficiently. Victoria had already arranged for her belongings to be shipped separately, everything else she was leaving behind. Billions of dollars in assets being transferred to a trust, her company being sold to a competitor who'd been circling for years. She was burning her old life as thoroughly as Ethan had burned his. No regrets? He asked as she signed the last papers officially transferring control. None, she said firmly. I built that company to prove I could, to show everyone who doubted me. But I don't need to prove anything anymore. I know who I am. The ride to the airport was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. Lily had her face pressed to the window, saying goodbye to a city she'd barely known, but that had shaped her in fundamental ways. She was leaving Chicago as a different child than she'd entered it, older, warier, but somehow also more hopeful. Hangar 7 sat at the private aviation section of O'Hare, a nondescript building that could have housed anything. Morrison was waiting beside a Gulfstream G650, looking tired but satisfied. Your chariot awaits, and he said, gesturing to the plane. Fully fueled flight plan filed for Miami International. Your documents are on board: new passports, driver's licenses, birth certificates, complete histories going back 3 generations. The algorithm-generated backstories are so detailed even you'll believe them. Thank you, Victoria said, and surprised him with a hug. For everything, Tom. Even the parts that hurt. Morrison returned the embrace awkwardly. Your father would be proud of you, Victoria. The person you've become despite everything, that's all you, not him. I know, she said. That's why I can walk away. Morrison turned to Ethan and extended his hand. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About Webb, about the burn notice, about all of it. You deserved better from us. We all did things? Ethan said, shaking his hand. The difference is we're trying to do better now. Lily, Morrison crouched down to her level. You take care of your dad, okay? He needs someone to keep him out of trouble. I will, she said solemnly. And Victoria will help. She's good at telling people what to do. Morrison laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. That she is. As they boarded the plane, Morrison called out one last time. Cole, the network's been shut down. Webb's contacts, all of them either arrested or eliminated. You're truly free. No one's looking for you anymore. Ethan nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Free. The word felt foreign, impossible. He'd been running or fighting for so long, he wasn't sure he remembered how to simply exist. The plane was luxurious beyond anything Ethan had experienced, all cream leather and polished wood. Lily immediately claimed a seat by the window, eyes wide at the opulence. Victoria settled beside her, already pulling up real estate listings on a tablet. Look, she said to Lily. This one has a treehouse in the backyard. As they went through listings, Lily vetoing anything without a pool. Victoria insisting on good schools. Ethan focused on security features. Something settled in Ethan's chest. This was what normal people did. They looked at houses, planned futures, made decisions based on wants rather than needs. The plane lifted off Chicago, falling away beneath them. Ethan watched the city shrink, all its violence and pain becoming abstract manageable. Somewhere down there, his old apartment stood empty. Sarah's grave lay under fresh flowers he'd never place again. The jewelry store where it all started had probably reopened, the blood mopped up, the broken glass replaced. But that was the past. Below them, behind them, done. Daddy, look, Lily pointed out the window. We're above the clouds. Indeed they were, the plane breaking through into brilliant sunshine, an endless vista of white stretching in every direction.
It was like emerging from a cave into light, like being born again. "It's beautiful," Victoria said, taking Ethan's hand. He squeezed back, watching his daughter marvel at the view, feeling Victoria's warmth beside him. Beautiful didn't begin to cover it. The flight was smooth, uneventful. Lily napped after the excitement wore off. Victoria worked on her tablet, setting up bank accounts, arranging furniture delivery, building their new life with the same intensity she'd once built her empire.
Ethan simply sat, allowing himself the luxury of not planning, not watching, not waiting for the next threat. It was harder than he'd expected. "You're twitching," Victoria observed, not looking up from her screen. "I don't twitch." "You're drumming your fingers, your leg is bouncing, and you've checked the cabin door 4 times. "Habits," he admitted. She set down the tablet, turned to face him fully. "It's going to take time to feel safe, to believe it's real. That's okay. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to be normal? Then we'll be abnormal together. I don't want normal anyway. Normal is boring." She smiled. "Besides, you're not broken. You're just seasoned, like a cast iron skillet. Better for the wear." "Did you just compare me to cookware?" "Very expensive cookware," she clarified. "The kind you pass down through generations." Despite himself, he laughed. It felt good, clean free of the bitter edge that had colored his humor for years. "Tell me about Miami," he said. "What's our plan?" "Well, Mr. David Wilson, you're a former Marine turned high school teacher, recently widowed, moving south for a fresh start with your daughter Emma and your new fiancée, Dr. Grace Mitchell." "Fiancée. Makes the timeline less suspicious. We met at a grief counseling group, bonded over loss, fell in love. Very romantic, very believable. And very fast. Sometimes the best things are." She pulled up a photo on the tablet. "This is the house I'm thinking. 4 bedrooms, pool, good security, excellent schools nearby." The house was perfect Spanish colonial style, with a red tile roof, palm trees in the yard, a pool that sparkled impossibly blue. It looked like something from a magazine, the kind of place he'd never imagined living. "We can afford this." "I liquidated everything carefully. We have enough to live comfortably for several lifetimes. Not billionaire money, but enough that you'll never have to worry about choosing between groceries and electricity again." The casual way she said it, the matter-of-fact erasure of his biggest fear, made his throat tight. "Victoria Chet, Grace," she corrected. "Better start getting used to it. And you're David, though I might call you Dave when I'm feeling casual." "I don't look like a Dave." "You don't look like a David either, but here we are." Lily stirred, blinking awake. "Are we there yet?" "Another hour, baby, Ethan said. "Emma." She giggled. "That's weird, Daddy. I mean Dave." "Very weird," he agreed. "But weird in a good way." As they began their descent into Miami, the city spread below them like a promise. Turquoise water, white beaches, buildings that caught the sun like mirrors. It was so different from Chicago's gray intensity, from the mountains of Afghanistan, from every battlefield he'd known. "Fresh start," Victoria murmured, seeing the same thing he was. "Fresh start," he agreed. The landing was smooth, and they were met on the tarmac by a woman in a suit who introduced herself as their relocation coordinator. She had keys to a rental car, keys to the house, enrollment papers for Lily's new school, everything they needed to slot seamlessly into their new lives. "The house is fully furnished," she explained as they drove. "Basic necessities are stocked. Your personal belongings should arrive tomorrow. Is there anything else you need immediately?" "A dog," Lily said from the back seat. "We're getting a dog." The coordinator smiled. "There's an excellent animal shelter nearby. I can arrange a visit tomorrow if you'd like." "Please," Victoria said with the authority of someone used to having requests fulfilled. The drive to the house took them through neighborhoods that grew progressively nicer, from urban sprawl to suburban paradise. When they finally turned into their driveway, Lily gasped. "It's huge." It was bigger than anywhere Ethan had lived. But more than that, it was warm, welcoming, with lights already on inside and the smell of fresh flowers drifting from the open door. "Welcome home," the coordinator said, handing over the keys. Home. Such a simple word for such a complicated concept. They explored the house together, Lily running from room to room, claiming the one with the best view of the pool. Victoria examined the kitchen with satisfaction, already planning meals. Ethan checked windows and doors out of habit, but also noted the alarm system, the strong locks, the sightlines that would let him see anyone approaching. Old habits, but maybe useful ones. As the sun set on their first day in Miami, they sat by the pool eating takeout Chinese from boxes, their feet dangling in the water. Lily had found a beach ball somewhere and was batting it around, her laughter echoing off the water. Regrets? Ethan asked Victoria. About which part? Giving up billions of dollars? Adopting fake identities? Moving to Florida with a man I've known for less than a week? Any of it? All of it? She was quiet for a moment, watching Lily play. My biggest regret is that it took almost dying to start living. All those years building walls, accumulating power, proving points to people who didn't matter. I could have been doing this instead. Being happy. Happiness is overrated, Ethan said, but he was smiling. Liar. You're happy right now. He considered it. The constant weight on his chest had lifted. The hypervigilance had dimmed to a manageable hum. Lily was laughing. Victoria Grace was beside him. They were safe. Yeah, he admitted. I am. Good. You deserve it. We all do. Lily climbed out of the pool, dripping wet despite not having a swimsuit, and inserted herself between them. This is the best day ever, she announced. Even better than Christmas.
It's pretty good, Ethan agreed, pulling her close despite the water. Tomorrow will be better, Victoria said. We'll get your dog and enroll you in school, maybe go to the beach. And the next day, whatever we want, Ethan said. That's the beauty of it. We get to choose. Lily seemed to consider this, then nodded. I choose happy. All of us happy. Deal, Victoria said, kissing the top of her head. Later, after Lily was asleep in her new room, Ethan and Victoria sat on the porch, watching the stars reflect in the pool. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful, in a way that would have made him nervous a week ago. Now, it just felt like possibility. She's resilient, Victoria observed. After everything she's been through, she's still so open, so hopeful. Kids are like that. They adapt faster than adults. Or maybe she just has a good father who protected her innocence even when his own was long gone.
Ethan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just pulled her closer. I've been thinking, Victoria said, about what Morrison said, about no one looking for you anymore. Do you believe it? I believe the immediate threat is gone. Webb's network is dismantled. The burn notice is lifted. But there are always going to be ghosts. People who remember, who hold grudges, who might someday decide to collect old debts. So we're never truly safe. No one is ever truly safe. But we're safer than we were. Safe enough to build something. Safe enough to try. That's a very philosophical answer. I'm a very philosophical guy. Dave Wilson, high school philosophy teacher. History, she corrected. You're teaching history. Right. Because I'm so good at leaving the past behind. She laughed soft in the darkness. Maybe that's exactly why you should teach it. Show kids that history isn't just dates and battles. It's people making choices, living with consequences, trying to do better. The way you talk about it, I almost believe I could do it. You can do anything, she said firmly. You've survived everything else. How hard can teaching teenagers be? Harder than Afghanistan, probably. But with better hours and less gunfire. Presumably. They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Somewhere in the distance, music played Latin rhythms drifting on the warm air. This was Miami, their new home, their new life. It still felt surreal, like a dream that might evaporate if examined too closely. I love you, Victoria said suddenly. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I need you to know. This isn't just adrenaline or shared trauma. I love the way you are with Lily, the way you check every lock twice, the way you still talk to Sarah sometimes, when you think no one's listening. I love your damage and your strength, and the way you're trying so hard to be normal, when normal was never who you were meant to be. Ethan turned to look at her, this remarkable woman who'd walked away from everything to be here with them, starting over. I love you too, he said. I love that you're terrible at being vulnerable, but you try anyway. I love that you bought Lily clothes before you knew we were coming with you. I love that you can plan a corporate takeover and a 7-year-old's birthday party with equal intensity. I love that you saw us broken and dangerous and lost and decided we were worth saving. You saved yourselves. I just provided transportation. You provided a lot more than that." She kissed him, then soft and deep and full of promise. When they pulled apart, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Sarah would approve," she said, "of this of us." "How do you know?" "Because she loved you enough to make you promise to live even after she was gone. This is living, Ethan. This is what she wanted for you." He thought about Sarah, about their last conversation before the final surgery. She'd made him promise to find happiness again, to give Lily a complete family, to stop punishing himself for things he couldn't control. At the time, he'd agreed just to give her peace. He never thought he'd actually do it. But here he was doing it, living, moving forward, building something new on the ashes of something lost. "We should go in," Victoria said. "Big day tomorrow, new life to build and all that." "In a minute," Ethan said, not ready to let go of this moment. This perfect, impossible moment where everything felt balanced on the edge of possibility. A week ago, he'd been nobody struggling to survive, watching his daughter slowly forget how to smile. Now he was here in Miami with a new name and a new future, and a woman who'd chosen them over billions of dollars. It didn't feel real. It might never feel entirely real, but it felt good, and that was enough. "Daddy?" Lily's voice drifted from inside. "I can't sleep. Everything sounds different here." "I've got her," Victoria said, standing. "You take your minute." She went inside, and Ethan heard her talking to Lily, explaining about different birds, different insects, how every place had its own nighttime symphony. He heard Lily giggle at something, heard Victoria offer to lie down with her until she fell asleep. Family. They were building a family. His phone, the new one registered to David Wilson, buzzed with a text. For a moment, the old fear spiked. But it was just Morrison, a final message. "The senator who ordered the investigation into you has been indicted for taking bribes from defense contractors. Your name never came up. It's over, Ethan. Really over. Be happy." Ethan deleted the message, then, on impulse, threw the phone in the pool. David Wilson could get a new one tomorrow. Tonight, he didn't want any connection to the outside world. He went inside, found Victoria and Lily curled up together in Lily's bed, both asleep. He stood in the doorway, watching them breathe, these two people who'd become his entire world in a matter of days. Moving carefully, he lay down on Lily's other side, sandwiching her between them. She stirred, mumbled something about dolphins, then settled back into sleep. Victoria's eyes opened, found his across Lily's sleeping form. "Okay," she whispered. "Perfect," he whispered back. And for the first time in 3 years, maybe for the first time ever, it was true. Not perfect in the fairy tale sense, they were all too damaged for that. But perfect in the real sense, the human sense. They were alive, they were together, they were free. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Lily would have to adjust to a new school, new friends, a new identity. Victoria would have to learn to live without the power and purpose her company had provided. Ethan would have to figure out how to be David Wilson, ordinary person, when every instinct screamed danger at shadows. But they'd figure it out. Together. The last thing Ethan saw before sleep took him was the ceiling fan turning lazily overhead, casting shadows that for once didn't look like threats. Just shadows. Just the ordinary play of light and dark that filled ordinary rooms in ordinary houses where ordinary people lived ordinary lives. He could get used to ordinary. In fact, he was betting his life on it, all 3 of their lives. And for the first time since Sarah died, he was confident it was a bet he could win.